Hello, thank you for joining me. Uh,
Hi.
I start with a fun fact, and with Katie, I like the fun fact that I have about you is like every time that I ask you how was your weekend, you told me I ran, and you told it to me as if it's a good thing, as if like running is a good thing to do over the weekend. I'm like always like, oh my God, that's the last thing I want to do in the weekend is run. But now I'm going to the gym and I actually run, and I understand what you're saying, and I understand
Oh,
what you always told me about like running is could be actually a good thing. So that's my
yay.
fun fact about you.
Oh my gosh, I love that fun fact. Yes, that's when I think about how I describe myself within the industry, my slide for all my presentations is that I'm a mother, runner, and marketer, and an amateur Swiftie in no particular order. So runner is that first one. It's probably of all of those identities, the ones that's been with me the longest and taught me the most. So yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Okay, so we're gonna when I ask you, first of all, introduce yourself, and then we're gonna talk about the topics that we're gonna talk about.
Yeah. So, thrilled to be chatting. Katie Miller here, a longtime developer marketing and developer relations leader and advisor. I cut my teeth at Google, where I had the good fortune to be working hand in hand with Amir on some of our programs. So I really learned from the best. I think my fun fact is you were one of the individuals who helped me convert from marketing over to developer relations. So I will always hold that interview with a place of gratitude. So thank you. And after stints a long time at Google, where I had an opportunity to lead programs, building out a global social media program, as well as a global developer events program within the cloud organization. Did product marketing at Asana on the platform and infrastructure side, and then led developer marketing at Slack. And now am spending my professional energy giving back to the practice of DevRel and dev marketing through mentoring, advising, education, and community building. I also clearly am a mother, runner, marketer, and amateur Swiftie in no particular order, counting down the days to October 3rd, 2025, when Life of a Showgirl hits, and just thrilled to be having this conversation with you.
Life of a showgirl. Okay, we'll need to talk about that after the podcast. I don't know
Fair, fair.
what that means.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, have you not been in the Swiftie sphere? That's her new album that's
No,
coming out on
unfortunate.
October
Okay.
3rd.
Okay, got it. Okay, now I'm. That's the key takeaway of this podcast. Okay, so if you talked a little bit about programs, and I hear about programs a lot. Why do you need programs in developer outreach and developer relations?
Ooh. So when when I first moved, so story to answer that question, when I first moved from marketing into developer relations, I felt like there was a lot of friction with my presence with some of the developer advocates. And finally had this moment where one of the advocates looked at me and said, my job is to move fast, break things, and not get fired. And a light bulb went on because I was able to turn to them, and it might not have been, it's much more elegant a story in hindsight. And I looked at them and said, well, my job is to not get you fired. And the deeper side of that is we're all on the same team. We're all on the same page. We believe in the product, and we believe in the importance of developers in the input in shaping that product to make sure it's something that they will use, want to use, know how to use. And technical teams, and they take many names: developer relations, developer advocacy, evangelism, technical support, whatever it may be. They are maestros at understanding the product, being able to translate it and put it in the forms that developers are going to be able to engage with it, whether it's documentation, video content, speeches, whatever the case may be. We need to make sure that from a business strategy perspective, that is getting out to those developers, and that we're connecting the dots between that content going out and their success and business impact. And so without programs, you know, a lot of things are happening and a lot of really good things are happening. And you kind of have these hypotheses, but you don't have the rigor and structure in place. And so having that marriage of functions within developer relations, that it's not just engineers and advocates, but there are also program managers, product marketers. We wear a lot of different titles and hats. It's that partnership together that ensures that the things developers need to be successful are discoverable, usable, and most importantly, trackable and aligned to business outcomes. So that's really why I feel it's so important.
So give me an example of a program. If I don't know what a program is, what is the type of program?
That's a great question, and I think from experience, a lot of things can end up falling under that program umbrella. Some of the most common ones, community is an example, and oftentimes you wouldn't think of community. You want to think of community as being authentic and organic and so forth, and yet at the same time, if you're thinking making decisions around tooling to use, staffing, what the intent of the community is, what kind of reporting you're going to do back, what kind of initiatives you're going to do, how you're going to monitor the community, how you're going to drive engagement. That all has strategy behind it. And so I would think of a program as anything that is going to be scalable, replicable, measurable, repeatable. I said repeatable twice, potentially automated, having automated elements that are going to provide the scaffolding and the infrastructure for the technical goods, if you will, to get to the developers. And so it could be community, it could be events, it could be like ambassador champions programs,
Support, probably, right?
support, things like that. That there's that programmatic, structured lens that somebody can come back and say, how are we doing this and what is the outcome? It's that programmatic or business lens to the advocacy work and the engineering work that's happening in the organization.
Do you think that programs are needed for big companies as well as startups, or startups don't need to worry about that and just to develop, like talk to developers?
That's such a good question. And I actually think I flip it around a little bit and ask, when is a program needed in general? Because
Okay.
I think the hygiene is necessary regardless of the size of the company. A larger company is going to have more capacity and means, particularly to try experimental programs, and maybe to start them sooner rather than later, because they simply have more capacity and scale. But to me, it's, when is something moving from kind of a part of something that someone's doing kind of as a side hustle or an experiment, and all of a sudden it's starting to encroach on their full-time job, or it's getting to the point that without some sort of process ensuring consistency of experience and outcome is going to start to break down. And that's the point at which, whether it's a portion of a program manager's job or the portion of an operator's job, or is the time that you bring in somebody full-time to do it. Using an example from Google is, I built out and grew the social media program. Was social media happening before? Absolutely. It was also, each product line had their channels that they were managing. There were different intake processes, there were different cadences of posting, there were different review processes that were happening. And so if somebody landed on Google developers versus Android developers versus Chrome developers versus Geo developers, it wasn't consistent. And at the risk of taking away the unique voice and kind of product positioning of each one, you wanted to at least make sure they were getting the same back-end legal review process, or that there was a regular cadence of posting. And so I think that was a point of saying these developer relations teams have grown to the point that having the Twitter account live with a random developer advocate probably didn't make sense. That these brands and these channels were established enough that they needed someone who was going to pay attention to make sure that the intake process, the review process, the editorial process was going to be consistent. And I think that that's a great example of when it actually happened at a larger company where they said, this is no longer fly by the seat of our pants. We'll do it as we do it, but we actually need someone really thinking about it holistically and in a structured way.
I love that. And one of the things that you said that really struck is like measurable. Like if you can measure it. And I think one of the problems with developer relations is that often we do things because they feel right, because we have the right intuition, but we can't measure it. And if we can't measure it, we can't get more resource behind it, and we can't like justify to the leadership, to the product team, that this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So a program really helps you reach this adulthood version of what you're doing and making it measurable and impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And to be clear, measurement, that could be its own special, unique conversation over here. I don't know if we have enough time for it. I'm happy to touch upon some of my principles, but that feels like its own special beast. But it isn't to say it's easy. It is to say that when you have a person or a team who is thinking about it and can put the time into place to chase down all of the APIs for the different platforms and build them into a database or a dashboard, who can talk with the business analyst team to get some resourcing to do some modeling or some survey work, who can go and build good relations with the marketing operations team so that they'll intake our leads from events and actually score them for sales. So even though measurement within the developer programs world is its own beast, having that person who has that mindset and who's comfortable with that mindset, that gives the freedom and opportunity for the advocates to do what they do best and to make sure that their work is accounted for, feels, that feels like that right level of maturity and responsibility within the org.
I feel like I want to hear about your principles of measurements, if it's a short thing.
Yeah, I giggle because I feel like I've been at enough companies who are like, every quarter they're like, what is your North Star? It's like, this is too complicated. So I always like to talk about, instead of, there are lots of models, there's a funnel model, there's a flywheel model. I think that there's value in each of those. I describe the adoption process as a squiggly line. It's a journey, and it's never necessarily straight or easy. And so that's my first principle, is just accepting that and conveying that the adoption process
You're talking about the developer funnel,
Yeah,
the developer
exactly.
journey. Okay, got it.
Yes. Yeah, it's much more like playing The Legend of Zelda than like you put water in a funnel and it goes into a cup. Like that's just not how it works. And I think with that, you can't necessarily just use tried and true funnel things. Yes, you need to make sure you have good analytics that are connected to funnels. You need to use ref codes on everything so that you can understand kind of the behavior. Like if you have a blog post, where are people going and what are they doing once they get to that other destination? Like that's really good measurement hygiene. Like, and yet at the same time, there's no one single data point. It really is looking at the relationship of data points, everything from the performance of leads that are captured in an event, the volume of not just views, but engagement on social media platforms. I'm not fully dismissive of social media engagement because it's one signal that you combined with all the other signals to say what are the things that are happening here. And so that's really my principle, is that it is a constellation and that no data point on its own answers the question. nor should any data point be dismissed as not being valuable, especially without interrogating it in the context of all of the other behavior that's happening. So,
Got it. So the journey, and the journey is connected by multiple points, not just like a single. It's not like a Shopify funnel where I see a pants and I want to buy them. It's more. It's a
yeah.
different journey of decision. Yes, I love that.
Well, and just along those lines, especially with this being platform, is depending on the size of the company, the autonomy that somebody has to use something, if it is open sourced, if there is a fee, what your company's, not just your buying decision process, but then the security and compliance review and the ease at which something can actually move from any kind of sandbox into production. All of those things take time, like the buying process alone, the testing process alone, the building process alone. And I feel like this isn't said enough for all of us who have been at all of these companies that are constantly going through reorgs, that are constantly going through like quarterly budget shifts. Like, I don't know any company, at least none of the ones I've been to, where it's like you get a budget at the beginning of the year and that's your budget and you can plan. Like every quarter, it's like there's more money, there's less money, and things like that. And so if you separate out any of the actual technical testing, if you separate out the complexity of who makes the decisions, that alone of saying like, how easy is it to adopt a new thing at a company? Like, especially the larger company, anyone who's looking like mid-level enterprise above, the amount of bureaucracy that gets in the way, and you're like, you're so close. And then a DevRel VP leaves, and all of a sudden you need to like start from scratch, like selling it to a new person and building a new thing and building a new example. And I don't think we speak enough that like all of us at all of our companies are going through this, and we all want everyone else to buy our thing faster.
Yes, yes, that's
And
true.
yet,
And your stakeholder keeps leaving and moving to
yes,
another organization.
yeah,
Yes, that happens
yeah,
a lot. I want to shift the conversation, and I totally agree. I think reorgs are the bane of enterprise
but we don't.
life.
But we don't talk about it enough. Like, we know how hard it is in our company to adopt something, and then we get annoyed when
That
other
it's the
people
hard.
can't do it faster.
That's true. That's very, very true. And I think the more enterprise you try to sell to, the more the enterprise developer you try to sell to, the more you get exposed to that, how the sausage is made in the organization, in the big
Oh my
organization.
gosh. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so I wanna, because we only have a few more minutes, I want to talk about one of the programs that you mentioned that you kept running, and I think it's a important aspect of developer outreach, which is events.
Mm-hmm.
When, why, where, everything about events.
Everything about events in 2 minutes. Go. Um, I always point back to Slash Data's annual, biannual developer leaders programs survey. The name has changed over the years. Anyone from Slash Data listening, I apologize. I love your work. Um, they do this view where on one side it looks at how much companies invest in different programs, and the other is how much developers value those programs. And if you look at that and that alone, events are kind of over here where companies spend a ton of money and developers say it's not a priority. And yet, there are two things. The first is they're going to events. So I guess if you were to rank order things, they're like, yes, we're going to events, but we're using these other things 10 times more. And we like people and so forth. But I also try and flip the narrative on what events are. And to me, I feel like they are a package of the programs. That if an event is good, you're going to be having the opportunity to connect to the people who you'd be connecting to in forums. That the content is covered is the content that you would be discovering in documentation and samples and videos and things like that. There are opportunities to get hands-on with labs and demos and so forth. And so to me, if we think of events as just a thing, I would agree. But if they're done well and you're like, how do we take all of the work that we're doing and we give this 1 day or 2 days or 3 days where They are going to be there and they are going to be focused. And the goal is to learn and to connect and to take what they need, and it aligns with all of those other programs that they say are important. I'm a huge believer in events. We're so busy, we're so distracted. What a gift to get to invest your energy in a focused period of time to do what it would take days or weeks or months to accomplish if you were trying to piece it together on your own while juggling work and meetings and family and life and running and all of those things. And so, and I do believe events can be measured. I believe that they can be done beautifully. I believe that they can be done very badly. I have been involved with both. I've been responsible for both. But that's why I'm such a big believer in that. And
I,
honestly, yeah. So I could keep going. That was probably more than two
no, no, no.
minutes. So.
I think one of the, it doesn't need to be 2 minutes. We have hours and hours. But like one of the things that you said that really resonated with me is like getting to the gist of things, the things that you couldn't have done in a short period of 2 days. I remember Mobile World Congress, which is an event in Barcelona that we ran at Google. We participated at Google, and I had the chance to meet Samsung and Angry Birds and EA and Riot and all these amazing developers that were building on top of Android at the time or integrating with Android. And we couldn't have met all of them, or it would have taken us months to meet all of them, but they all came to the event. So it's not just like telling in events, it's also hearing and meeting in events. And I think that's one of the key
Absolutely.
aspects of a good event.
Absolutely. And I spoke at it more from the attendees perspective. I think about one of the last major in-person events, sponsored events that my team and I were involved in back in 2019 before events took a very different turn for a few years and now is returning. And it was interesting that you reminded me of that because it was in Barcelona. It was KubeCon. And
Mm.
you know, Google's involvement in it was really multifaceted because you had the open source investment, you had the commercial investment, you had PR, analyst relations, all of those things. And it was like, how do you show up as a company to accomplish all of the things that you want to? And on the flip side, ensure that the attendees who are engaging with you have a clear, seamless, fluid experience. And they know when they're in an open source space, they know when they're in a community space, they know when they're in a commercial space. And when we looked at the outcome, having that cross functional, collaborative planning and engagement and strategy meant that we could look at the impact holistically, but analyst relations connected with everybody they needed to. PR did. There were strategic customer meetings, and there was exceptional, authentic community building that people could be in a space and feel like they weren't being sold to. So,
I love that. Okay, last question.
mhm.
Future of events, is it online or is it in person?
I I think that there will be a legacy of a hybrid model or a combination. People are craving people, especially especially more and more, and it's for a couple of reasons. I think more and more because that there is that sense of what is the role of a human in technology. It's everything from connecting and figuring out how to build this future together. Some of the most productive, interesting, constructive conversations I've had of like, what's the intersection of AI and marketing have been when you actually put the people, not the tools, but the people in a room together to have those conversations. And so I do think that there is nothing that can replace the relationship building and the authentic connections that come from breaking bread together at an event. And I don't think you will ever get that focus that you get from in person events where the Wi-Fi is going to be spotty, so you can't necessarily be fully doing your work, where you're not going to have a comfortable chair because the hallway track literally is a cement hallway. Like, you can't replicate that online. It's just too easy to like pick up your phone. It's too easy to be listening, half listening, and like cooking your lunch and doing your laundry and things like that. At the same time, though, it did show us that online can work in certain contexts and does offer amount of scale, especially on a global level, that it was just not cost effective to do necessarily in person all the time.
I love that. I love the human connection. I'm a firm believer in human connection. Thank you so much for joining. It's been such a pleasure and very, very interesting and a lot of good points. So thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.